Okay, so I'm going to start with the question, in what ways does your media product use, develop or challenge forms and conventions of real media products? Now I'm going to go through the sort of typical conventions of documentaries and then say whether I've used them, whether I've challenged them, or whether I've developed them within my film, and just sort of tell you how I've done so, if I have, and what I've done throughout the process. So the first thing I want to start with is voiceovers. Now, voiceover is a very common thing that you will hear or see in a documentary, and it will usually be there to sort of tell you what's going on without actually being able to see the narrator or the presenter. So normally in things like The Lonely Planet or I'm trying to think of other documentaries, Blue Sea, other things like that, you'll often see what's actually going on, and then you'll hear the information over the top, so you can sort of link those both together without obviously being one person in a shot as well, as that will, you sort of compromise the shot that you will eventually get. You'll usually, the tone of the voiceover will usually be fairly authoritative, just because it's actually, majority of the time, it's teaching you something. So obviously my film is not a stereotypical documentary, I wouldn't say. I think I've changed it up quite a lot and used different things and challenged them in quite a lot of ways. So voiceover is one that I have challenged. Of course I haven't actually used any voiceover in my film at all, which is quite unusual for documentaries because that is something that you do commonly see. Instead, my film uses face-to-camera scenes, and obviously that's in every sort of interval. So I'll sit there and I'll update you on what's going to happen, and then you will then watch that information. So instead of watching it and hearing to it, you're hearing what's going to happen, then you're going to see it. So it's more of like a sequence performance rather than all blended into one. And if I'm honest, I think that worked a lot better for what I was doing. I think if I had a voiceover, I think it would have got a lot messier, and I don't think what I wanted to show would have looked right at all. I think I wouldn't have achieved my aim of a sort of diary, as that's what I'd sort of say that Villa was sort of always keeping up to date with. Yeah, I'd say that it was mostly a diary, so she would use it to say, this is what I'm going to do today, and then you'd see. So yeah, it's a documentary style, but you're not getting the voiceover that you'd commonly hear, and you're not linking those two together, like the information and the image that you're getting. Instead, they are separate and they're more in a sequence. So why I did that is because I didn't want to be commentating. I wanted to record what was going on, then view it. So like I say, it's just in a secretive pattern. The next thing is the use of real footage. So in documentaries, it's essentially seen as non-fiction, as documentaries are. So, I mean, it's often shown to be seen, the whole footage is often shown to be seen as real footage and sort of not been tampered with, not been edited, that sort of as if the camera's been placed there and it's been waiting to get the footage, and then they've just put that piece of footage in to show you what actually happens in a sort of a natural environment. Again, think of sort of The Lonely Planet, things like that, because you don't just get those shots just out of coincidence, they will just, you know, happen over time. And documentaries will go to great lengths to convince the audience that the footage is real and hasn't been tampered with at all. Although a lot of the time voiceover and editing can sort of change the audience's opinions because you're sort of being told what's going on rather than seeing it and then figuring it out in your own mind, sort of making up your own story. So that's just a mechanism that's often used in documentaries, and I have used this convention a lot. If I'm honest, my whole film I use this technique. I constantly have the camera in my hand. or the camera's set up in a place and I'm going to that camera, rather than obviously the camera's there and I'm going to it, not it's sort of in the Lonely Planet that the camera's set up there and then something will come along. I'm actually going directly to the camera, so I know that when the things are going to be shot. So I'm always showing, not in the face to camera bit, but when I actually have a camera in my hand doing what I'm doing every day, I'm always showing my point of view and what I see, or, you know, over my shoulder and things like that. But also, these shots are also because I did have sort of limited camera angles, just because I was acting in it and I was the cameraman. I didn't have any other help. I did that all by myself. So as opposed to what you'd normally see in a documentary is being a lot of different angles, a lot of different perspectives. Instead, you're just seeing mine, and the shots and the angles are very similar. They do, they are always sort of point of view shots or middle shots. I have thrown in some sort of long shots in there where I can and close-ups, but again it was very hard to do that just because it was real footage that I was showing. So so basically what I'm just saying is what I am showing is a true portrayal of what is real in my film. Nothing's sort of jaded there to be fake. That is all what's happening. Where I am's real, location's real, costumes real, sets real, everything that's actually there is real, which is what you'd normally most commonly seen in documentaries. So I think I really have fulfilled that convention of a documentary, and I have using real things in my documentary, real footage in my documentary. So the next thing is realistic techniques. So documentaries often use natural sound and natural lighting. So instead of going to a Hollywood set and building up your set, instead you're actually using actual scenery and making the most of actual sound, actual light, incorporating all those things rather than sort of making them all yourself. Again, you'll often see a lot of open spaces, and a good example of this is documentaries like Educating Essex. If you've watched Educating Essex, you'll know that you'll often hear the school bell and you'll see children in the background a lot of the time, people running around, and that is a true portrayal of what that school is like. There's no, because a lot of it's sort of, again, cameras being set up and people going around it rather than the camera filming one specific thing, if that makes any sense. It's not been staged, it's all real life. And this is completely in comparison to films like Mean Girls, which is set in a school, and Bring It On. Obviously they're very Hollywood films, and that isn't 100% true portrayal of American high schools. So just to sort of get the gist of it, so just using natural sound and natural lighting and natural setting is what I've put under realistic techniques. So I think that I have developed this convention. Now, none of my footage has been enhanced. I haven't used any box lighting, I haven't used any professional equipment. None of that's been used in my film. and all my scenery and all my locations, they are genuine places where I have visited, and then I have taken the footage there. It's nothing that's been made to seem what it isn't, apart from in the scene where I'm obviously making my background seem what it isn't when I'm on Skype, but that's obviously shown in the film where I actually am. And again, you will see this if you've read my blog posts. Each of my location places I have written a post for, and you can see where exactly that is, areas surrounding it, and you will be able to tell that they're all sort of open spaces, all real places where I have visited. So, although I have challenged and developed the element of natural sound, so what I've done is I actually took away the element of surrounding sound. I took that all away in my footage, apart from in my face to camera bits. So instead of using all the sounds, birds, car noises, sea making noise, took all of that away, and instead I placed over the top diegetic sound and then used music. So the reason I did this was because I kind of managed the footage to be like a montage, and I thought for the audience adding music into it would make it a lot easier to view, rather than I think sort of just hearing that background noise all the time, because there was no dialogue. I feel like that could have got very boring for the audience to just constantly hear sort of wind and just things that shouldn't really be included. So I think that the use of music as diegetic sounds was very beneficial in my favour, because it sort of, obviously it's my own film, so I think well of it, but when I watch it I feel like that 7-8 minutes goes so quickly, and that's because I don't feel like at any point you're waiting for something to happen, and I feel like if I had left all the non-diegetic sound in the scenes where I'm not doing face to camera, I feel like it would have sort of slowed the pace down, and the audience would have been waiting for something to happen all the time. So in regards to lighting, all my lighting was 100% natural. As I said before, didn't use any box lighting, any other equipment. It was all natural lighting and just one camera. And that was just a basic Canon, just a flip basic camera. So a lot of the time when I was filming and when I refilmed some scenes, I was obviously struggling with sun issues. So I quickly learned that I had to sort of film at specific times of the day where the sun wasn't too bright, where it wasn't too low, so I could get a good shot just using natural light. So, and again without compromising the sun's glare. And talking about glare, actually, you can, in one of my scenes, in one of the footage, you can see, I think it's a bit where I'm sitting on the wall or on the steps down, you can see the sun sort of glaring in the side. Now, that happened in a fair few of my clips, which is why I refilmed them, but then I sort of left that bit in to show that it was 100% genuine light. I wasn't doing any editing, I wasn't editing over the top to get rid of that sun, to enhance any of the colours. I was literally leaving all of that in, so it was a true portrayal, and that was, I think, just to convey and portray a real, genuine documentary, rather than enhancing it for views or anything like that, just leaving it exactly how it is in its natural state, which I think actually worked really well and just backs up that whole point and enhances the genre which I'm trying to achieve. I do think, because I use natural lighting, the reason I did that was just because I thought that it was fairly typical of documentaries to do that. Obviously, in some shots, in some documentary films, they do use lighting. I'm sure a lot more than I probably am aware of they do. But a lot of the time, that's just because locations they're in aren't always the best, and to achieve what you want to achieve, you sometimes just need lights, and that's just one of the things. Sort of, for example, things like is it Blue Planet? Not Lonely Planet, Blue Planet underwater one. Obviously, to get clear underwater images, they'll have to use lighting under there, and that just happens in films. But I think genuinely, as a convention of documentaries, I did my research and sort of found out that a lot of the time they do just use raw footage, natural sunlight, what you see is what is going on, sort of thing. So that is why I just use natural sunlight. And all these decisions that I made to do with realistic technicalities, all these decisions that I made in that whole process, I did do these consciously. They were conscious decisions that I made, and the reason that I did those was because I continually wanted to challenge the typical conventions and the typical codes of documentaries, because I wanted to make something different. And as you can see from my film, that it isn't a typical, what you would typically call a documentary, because it's not fairly factual. It hasn't got that, I can't explain it. It's a bit more glammed up than documentary. It's a bit more of a film. Obviously you have documentary films, but it's a bit more of a sit down and watch film rather than sit down and learn sort of film. And that's what I wanted to create. I sort of wanted to create my own new genre. And if I'm honest, when I started doing this whole storyline, I wasn't sort of sure. I knew I wanted to do it in a style of documentary or something along those lines, but I wasn't 100% sure what genre it would fit in, because it was such a unique story, and I knew in my head how I wanted it to look, and I knew it wouldn't sort of fit into any convention of just one category, so one genre. So it is sort of a mix of different things. The next thing is interviews with experts. Is something that you will hugely see in a lot of documentaries. Obviously the interviews I use to authenticate views expressed in documentaries, to sort of back up people's opinions, or sometimes even to challenge people's opinions and just say why, other inputs. So clearly I didn't do that in mine, because it wasn't anything that was factual or sort of knowledgeable. Instead, I decided to challenge this convention and also develop this convention. So this is why I used face-to-camera scenes. So I use them so I could still incorporate this convention into my film, basically. So I know this is something often seen in documentaries. As well, you also see things like director's commentaries, and obviously presenters, a lot are in them. But I thought that if I did it in the way that I wanted to do it, with face to camera, I could continually and constantly put my input into the film, which is what interviews are doing, putting their input into the films. I thought if I was always constantly on the screen updating people, my input was always put in there, and then I was giving the audience the important information that they were looking for, as well as having a sort of presenter type character figure, sort of to guide them through the film. So like a documentary, having a presenter there that's always there, sort of updating what's going on, I was there to sit there, constantly coming back onto screen as a familiar face, same person, and let them know what's going on, update them on any information that needs to be going on, then they could see the footage. So I think the way that I did that for my film, I think worked really well. I mean, sometimes I can't really imagine that happening in other documentary films, just because the way that they are, what they're portraying, what they're showing, the way that they're filmed. But for my documentary film, which I think challenged a lot of conventions for documentaries, I think that worked really well, because it was just a way of developing that convention and that code. Now I think the last thing is visual coding. And for visual coding, I think that I challenged, developed and used all of this. So, visual coding, we're sort of talking mise-en-scène, props, sort of along all of the, covering all of those sort of lines. Now obviously I've already talked about lighting, I've talked about setting, and I've talked about sound. So I'll just continue on from the mise-en-scène. So the first thing I've written about is actors. Now, for a travelling film, travelling plot in my film, I felt that it was right it used someone between the 18 and 20-year-old sort of age bracket, as I've done a lot of research on travellers and the majority of the age of that bracket is 18 to 28-year-olds. I mean, when you go into sort of student travel things, a lot of they sort of cater for people 18 to sort of 30, but I just cut that down just 2 years, just from other research that I'd done. I found that that was the main age bracket, so I thought that's the sort of actor that I will need to use, someone in that age bracket. And then yeah, so which is why I thought that using myself, a 19-year-old girl, was going to be the correct decision for my film, because it fits someone in that age bracket, just on the younger scale of it. So, although I did this for a documentary film, you'll often see older, sort of in their 30s to sort of late 50s, 60s. You'll often see older actors and presenters. So, although I did find a few documentaries when I was doing my research, a few that sort of follow children and teenagers, obviously things like Educating Essex that I've already mentioned, and also a documentary called The Hollywood Complex. Although they sort of follow that age bracket, and you get sort of brief interviews as well with the children, there's always adults involved. But for documentaries, sort of factual documentaries, I've seen one on Auschwitz, obviously Lonely Planet, Blue Planet, some on food. You'll often get, like I said before, in the sort of 30s to late 50s, 60s age bracket, will be the people that are presenting. So obviously I challenged that form and just used someone younger, but not as young as children, as young sort of in the teens, early 20s, 19, yeah? So, next thing is costume. In pretty much all the scenes, Zilla, me, is wearing casual clothing. And I think that that was the best decision that I could have made. Obviously she is 19, she is a student, on a student budget. Obviously she can afford travelling, but a student is what you'll sort of portray her as when you see the age. So I didn't want to put her in anything designer or flashy. I just needed to be casual and just a true 19-year-old, what they would normally wear every sort of day, chilling around the house, going to the supermarket. So I think definitely that was the best choice that I could have made for costume. As well, using casual clothing, it relates to Zilla's personality, as she's quite a relaxed, approachable person. Obviously, she's never on camera, she's never sort of, what's the word? She's just easily approachable. She seems like a nice, welcoming person, not someone that's uptight or anything like that. So I think that just whole relaxed style and a relaxed approach, which again relates to the whole film, which is just a relaxed film, I think that just fits in really well. And as well, costume obviously establishes her financial state at the moment. Obviously a lot of students don't have the huge amount of money, so that's obviously, I've tried to incorporate that as well. Makeup in costume, obviously you can see a lot, I mean in her face to camera she's just at home, And yeah, she does have fairly minimal makeup, like today I do have, but again with the wing, that was for no reason at all. No, like it was literally just, I know that this cat eye is sort of a fairly popular style with teens at the moment, so I thought if I just incorporate that, as I do in my day-to-day life anyway, that would just be a true reflection. But then in my scenes where I'm out, where I'm taking pictures for Photoshop at the lake, and where I'm in the secret garden, I'm just wearing, literally all I'm wearing is a little bit of tinted moisturiser foundation, and that's it. I haven't done anything else, just because I want to make it look as natural as possible, because I think whenever people are on holiday, they don't wear a full face of makeup, they're just sort of there as they can be. And again, natural makeup, because when you're travelling, you'd be sort of travelling light if you're travelling, so light packing. Next thing is location. It's always, all locations that I've used are always very natural locations, either green or by water or, you know, old stones. And I think this just fits the plot and the theme of the film, as Zilla would be, obviously she'd constantly be travelling different places, by the sea, by the water, by greenery. If she's in northern Thailand, that's something that you would see a lot of the time, which is where we're saying that she is. So I think the location relates well to where she should be in the film. Props is a massive one. So what we most use as props, what I most use as props, is forms of technology. Now, obviously I had to use this in my film, as my film is all about a false life on the internet. So, phone constantly attached to the hand, constantly being filmed as attached in the hand. I have a lot of over-the-shoulder shots, point of view shots as well, of looking at the phone, as that's something that's constantly going on, as well as being on the computer screen, editing, things like that are constantly shown. So the use of technology is vital as a prop in this whole film. Obviously, if I didn't have any of that technology, this film wouldn't work, because there just wouldn't be a plot, would there? That is the main resource that I needed to get through this whole film, which is why it's shown so much. And the last thing is decor in the bedroom, which is just a sort of neutral room. It's sort of a white with a hint of pink in it. Obviously, girl's room fits perfectly with a girl who is the lead character, and I sort of wanted to make it like Easy A, as that was sort of the lines that I've gone across with the face to camera sort of webcam type style films, and just made her room look very comfortable and lived in a lot of the time. And I think that decor just really tied in, again with Zilla, and again with the rest of the film. So I think that I've definitely used, challenged and developed a lot of the conventions of documentaries. As I've said, I don't personally see my film as just a documentary just set in that genre. I would sort of mix it across some other genres as well, just because I think that I've created something new. If I'm honest, I think that my film comes into a new category which hasn't sort of been seen or is showcased that much. But yeah, I think that's everything.